Start the recording. So the idea with this is we're going to record this and we're going to provide a YouTube link, and folks can go back and review it, play it back slower, see what maybe you missed the first time around. I'm happy to repeat myself. I'm happy to answer questions. But what I was asked to do was to put together a presentation about Lightroom, looking at it from somebody's perspective that they've never used Lightroom, don't really have an idea what Lightroom is. So this is extremely basic material. A lot of y'all on the call, I know, use it extensively. Yeah, we're going to limit the discussion to things that are just, what do I got to know to kind of start using it? So having said that, the first thing is you got to get your mouse on the right window so that your cursor will advance your slide. We're going to be talking about Lightroom Classic. There's two different flavors of Lightroom. Lightroom Classic is what I use, and that's why we're going to talk about it, is because that's what I'm familiar with. And the distinguishing factor about Lightroom Classic is that the images are stored on the local machine. I have a 5 terabyte external hard drive on a USB 3.0 port. I just plug it into my laptop, and that's where I store my images. Now, I also have a 4 terabyte external hard drive that's my backup. That's a discussion for another day. The other flavor of Lightroom is called Lightroom Cloud, and it's got a slightly different logo. I guess if it were me, I wouldn't have called it Lightroom Classic, because Classic starts with a C and Cloud starts with a C, and every time I see the logo LRC, I think Cloud, but they didn't ask me. Lightroom that's cloud-based is where the images are stored in Adobe Cloud. And for me, my taste, I don't like that. I want my images stored where I can worry about them. So we're not going to talk about that. It goes away. When I think about Lightroom, I think about calling it a image processor. I don't think of it as an image editor. I'm making a kind of a fine distinction here, but Lightroom is something I use to make global adjustments to an image. As a matter of fact, I use a mouse when I run Lightroom. I use a pen and a tablet when I run Photoshop, because I think of Photoshop as an image editor. So an image, in terms of its life cycle, my workflow, it always goes into Lightroom first. And in Lightroom, it gets global adjustments. And then if I need to do some detailed adjustments, I'll export it over to Photoshop, and that's where I do that work. We won't be talking about that today. That'd be more of an advanced topic one night. Lightroom is also an image repository. It helps you organize your images. It does not make decisions for you. There is a facial recognition feature, but you can't expect Lightroom, I'm going to dump 1,000 photos into Lightroom and it's going to sort them for me. It's going to know these are my vacation pictures and these are my grandbaby pictures. It doesn't do that. It will let you do the sorting. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we talk about how to import photos in. Most digital cameras will produce your images in your choice of file formats. You can produce as you take the shot, you'll get a RAW file, or you can get a JPEG, or you can get both. Me personally, I generally keep my camera set on RAW only, and the RAW file is what we want to kind of talk about. It is a complete capture of the sensor data. So when your shutter opens and light is exposed on that sensor, a RAW file is whatever happened in that fraction of a second. A JPEG, and I'm not going to get into the technical aspects of what a JPEG is, other than to say it's taking that raw file in your camera and it's converting it to a viewable image. So when you look at the back of your camera and you see an image on the back of your camera, you're not looking at the raw file. You're looking at your camera's interpretation of that raw file as a JPEG. So it may look wonderful on the back of your camera. When you get into Lightroom, and as you'll see in a minute, it won't look exactly the same. You can make it look exactly the same, but it doesn't automatically. Lightroom, what I like about Lightroom is it allows you to control the conversion of that data from a raw file into a JPEG that is the way you want it. We'll look at how that works. One thing I think it's important to understand about Lightroom is when you import the images, you are importing a raw file onto your hard drive locally. When you do the adjustments, you are making entries into a file that's called the Lightroom Catalog. The Lightroom Catalog is nothing more than a database. If you work in the database arena, you could get a database editor and you could open up the catalog and you can actually see the adjustments that are in the file. I've done it. It's kind of boring, but I've done it just because I could. But that catalog is a database of the adjustments, and those adjustments get applied to the raw file. Because it's a database, because there are because it's a catalog, it's a database, you can have multiple sets of adjustments. So you can do one set of adjustments that give you a version of that raw file that looks like this. Then you can make another copy and you can make a totally different look. The colors are different, the crop is different. You can make a third one. This is more of a gloomy, darker type setting for the same raw file. You can make a black and white. You can delete the ones you don't like, but because the adjustments are in the catalog, you're actually never changing the raw file. Those adjustments just get applied to the raw file, and they're as if they were overlaid on top of it. And in doing so, that's why Lightroom is a non-destructive adjustment or processor of your image. When you do backups, totally different conversation for a different presentation. You have to back up both. You have to back up both the image, the raw file, and you have to back up the catalog. If you only do one or the other, it's incomplete. Here's a list of places that I frequent when I need Lightroom help. There's a website called Lightroom Queen. It's a lady in the UK, and she is the boss. She knows Lightroom backwards and forwards. If you've got a Lightroom issue, I bet you can find it on her website where somebody's talked about it, somebody's solved the problem. If you want to learn more in depth of how to use Lightroom to its fullest, I've used the phrase so much that my wife even says it back to me when I say I don't know how to do that. She'll tell me, go get on YouTube. You can learn anything you want to do on YouTube. I've changed a starter on a Honda Civic because I found a YouTube video on how to do it. Here are 4 different channels that I enjoy looking at. The official Adobe Photoshop Lightroom channel is very good. Terry White is actually an ambassador for Adobe, and he's very good. I like Anthony Morganti. He's very practical. He's really just an amateur photographer, just like the rest of us, but he gives good advice, and he will also have other photo processing and editing software, Capture One, Photoshop. There's one starts with an L. I cannot think of it. Luminar. Thank you.
Luminar AI. I have it.
Yeah. And Anthony Morganti will talk about that one. Serge Romali is he's a professional. He does a lot of YouTube videos. He is French, as the name implies. I have to kind of play him back a couple of times. Sometimes he'll say something I can't catch, just the accent. I don't know anybody that's got an accent, but he's very, very good with landscape. I enjoy a lot of his videos concerning that. So enough of the PowerPoint. I have got Lightroom. Well, let me stop. Any questions about what I went over? Kind of went over it kind of quick, but our time is kind of getting away. All right, so I'm in Lightroom, and I've got camp pictures up. The picture that Jackie stole probably from my Facebook page is one when I was at camp. I go to a kids camp every summer. I'm the photographer for the kids camp, and so we're gonna talk about importing photos in just a moment. But an easy starting place for this is to talk about organization of photos. This is on the left-hand side. The second one down says folders, and you can, that little triangle right there, you can roll that up, and then you click it, and now the triangle points down, and it expands the folders. This is my hard drive right here. It says 5 terabyte drive E. This is my hard drive, and if I go to Windows File Explorer, there it is, 5 terabyte drive E. I'm in the external photos folder, and then I've got my years, and you'll see those years match pretty much exactly with what's in the catalog. One of the things that you need to know about Lightroom is Lightroom wants to be the one in charge of your photo folders. What's a mistake is to come into Windows, or if you're on a Mac, go into your file manager, and to open up a folder and delete this folder, or to add it directly. Lightroom can't see it. Lightroom doesn't know it's there. Lightroom doesn't know that you took it away. So the better thing to do is don't use your operating system to move files around. Use Lightroom. You can do anything you want to do within these folders. If I wanted to delete a particular folder, I can highlight that folder, come down right here and find remove, and it will take all those photos out of both the catalog, and it will take them off my hard drive. Of course, I don't want to do that, but that was Air Force One flew in over Prattville that particular day. So manage your folders from within Lightroom. You can also move photos around by just simply dragging and dropping them over into the folder that you're interested in putting them in. When you do that, it will move it physically on your hard drive as well as update the catalog. When I'm at camp, what I want to talk about is how to work with a lot of photos quick. When I go to camp, I'll shoot, well, what did I shoot on Monday? I shot 500 photos on Monday. I shot 861 on Tuesday. Wednesday was a lighter day for me. I only shot about 197. But I shoot a lot of photos, and then what I need to do is I need to cull them. I need to go through and throw away the ones that I want and only focus on the ones that I need. In the first module over here, and we're only going to talk about library and develop today. In the library, it shows me all my photos, and I can click on one and it'll open up all the way. If I want to go back to the grid, I can click on the grid here at the bottom on my toolbar at the bottom. You can also use shortcut keys. So like if I open this one up and I want to go back to the grid, I can hit the letter G on my keyboard and it'll go back to the grid. I will use this grid, and there's a slider here at the bottom, and it will help me control how large these thumbnails are. And just at a glance, I'll go through and say, well, I took 2 shots here. I like this one the best, and I put a star on it. This one didn't get a star. I like this one, father-daughter picture, and Robbie's a buddy of mine, and he would appreciate having that that picture, so I put a star by it. Here's a nice group shot, put a star by it. So how you put the star by it, and I'll use this photo that doesn't have it, is you use your number. This is 1 star, so I hit 1. And so now there's a star. If it was a 2 star, I'd hit 2. And also all the way up to 5, right? If I don't want any stars, I hit 0. And that's very simple to put stars on. You can use this. I use it sometimes. I'll go through and I'll put 1 star on all the photos that I want to actually look at and process. I will then go through my second pass, and if there's any that, hey, these would be really good to use in our end of camp slideshow, I'll put 2 stars on those. You can also color code the photos. But now that I've gone through this whole library of 503 photos, I want to sort them. You come here at the very top, attribute. And here's all the different choices that can be made. I'm going to say I want greater than or equal to 1 star. So now all the photos that I did not give a star to, these are the only ones that I'm seeing. And now I can go through and make my second pass where I'll probably go through and actually have them in full screen. And I will move over to the development tab and process these photos. So any questions so far about how to cull through a large volume of photos quick? All right, so now I want to import some pictures. So I went out and I've been taking a few photos that I would think would be of interest to us. And I'm sorry, I jumped the gun there. Let me cancel that and go back. And I've got 4 photos that I've settled on that we'll work on tonight. Down here at the bottom left-hand corner of the library module is import and export. And we want to import the photos. And so I have the photos, here on my camera, and I've got my memory card, and I've plugged that memory card into my laptop here. So we're going to click on import. Is the screen sharing keeping up pretty quick with what
you're
we're
doing
showing?
pretty good.
So far, so good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So here's my 4 pictures. At this point, I could say, oh wait, I don't want that one to go into Lightroom, and I uncheck it. Or you can select it, hold the shift key down, and get from first one to last one, and then uncheck, and now all 3 of these will not be imported. I can go down here to the bottom and say uncheck all, or I can say check all. So we want to import all 4 of these, but we get some management of which ones we're going to import at this point. One of the things that Lightroom also does for you is it keeps up with what it's imported fairly well. I do something with my photos that trips it up at times, but if you import photos, often you'll get a warning that it'll say you've already imported this photo. So one of the things that I do over here on the right hand side is all of the parameters for how we're going to import. And I just realized I skipped something that I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about up here at the top. You'll notice that the word copy is highlighted, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to copy these photos off of the SD card onto my hard drive. There's another choice, and that's copy as DNG. DNG is Adobe's raw file format. So what it would do if I'm doing a copy as DNG, it would import the photo from my Canon format or from Bob Harris's Nikon format. No, you got a Sony now, don't you?
Yes.
Okay, so it would import it from his Sony raw format, convert it to Adobe's standard, which is DNG. That's going to be your choice. There's probably hundreds of articles about whether or not you ought to do that or not. Copy is going to bring my image in. There's also move and there's also add. If for some reason this raw file was already on my hard drive and I wanted to add them to my catalog, then I would have had to navigate to where those images are on the hard drive, select add, then I would be over here to choose how do I want to add these to my catalog. So we're going to copy. One of the first thing it asks you is, so how do you want to handle these files? Do you want to build previews? And yes, you want to build previews. Otherwise, you're going to have a very slow Lightroom. You will actually work in a preview and you'll see your adjustments applied to that preview. Then when you export it, it will actually build the JPEG. So I want a standard preview. I want smart previews. These are checked. That's my standard. And then I close this. I roll that up and I really never look at it again. I had to open it to show y'all. File renaming is something I do all the time. I'm going to pretend I took all 4 of these pictures on the same day, because what I normally do is just that. Like last Saturday when I really wanted to go to Gold Star Park, but instead I had to try to fix an electrical problem in my house, I would have had a series of images that I took at Gold Star Park. So when I imported them into Lightroom, I would have renamed the files and my custom text would have, this is my format. This is the way I do it. Everybody has their own choice. I've standardized on doing this. I put the year, I put the month, I put whatever that date was. I'm going to use today's date is the 8th. That's the first values in the file name. Then Lightroom is going to start at number 1, but I could change it. I could say start at number 10 if that's what I needed to do, but I'm going to have to start at number 1. And it's going to leave this extension, the Canon raw file extension, as it is. So now these photos are going to inherit this file name, and I'm going to lose the camera file name that was given to it. I need to do that because the camera goes 9,999 and then it rolls over. If I was importing I could end up importing duplicate image names if I didn't have a renaming system. I like renaming my photos this way because it gives me the I will never duplicate this date again. That date, once it's gone, it's gone. And in the past, it's helped me find photos. I've had somebody come to me much later and say, you gave me an image and it was this file name. Can you help me with that? Well, I can find it. If I've got the file name, I can find it. All right. So the other thing, we can apply develop settings. Now, we're going to apply none for tonight's presentation, but there are other develop settings, and I have 2 that I use. And basically, I'm going to walk you through how do you build these. But for starters, we're not going to apply any. The destination. Well, right here is my 5 terabyte drive E. I want to put this in my 2012 folder, and I want to give it a subtitle. And it's going to create a new subfolder, and I'm going to call it the CCCC Lightroom presentation. So you see that right here, there's a little grayed out, there's my folder that's going to be created in the 2021 folder. So having done this, I'm ready to import. Any questions about what I'm doing so far? All right, I'm going to hit import, and we're going to see these get sucked in. And here they come in, and you'll see up here in the top left-hand corner, Lightroom's giving me some progress bars. It's importing, it's creating the smart previews. All right, it's finished. I get a little warm and fuzzy assurance message. Smart previews were built or already exist for 4 photos. So I have this sorted by capture time. That's why Jamie's picture is the first one. I purposely tried to make it come in last. So I'm going to change this to file name. It's still imported. Hey, I just learned something. Okay, we'll come back to this. I'm going to skip Jamie's picture. I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to go to my landscape picture first. So I double clicked on it to open it up full screen. And in typical fashion, in a raw file, this doesn't really look like the photo that I took the day I took it. It was a really bright sunset that day.
All right.
And I just stepped out into the backyard and tried to grab a photo of it. You'll notice the histogram up here is sloped way to the left, which tells me that this is awful dark. Well, I can look at it and tell you it's awful dark. If I go to this photo, you'll see the histogram is way to the left because it's awful bright. So I'm going to go to the development module, and I've got some formulas that I use for landscapes. It's my starting point. It's not necessarily where I end up, but I generally do this first and then I adjust from there. I have the same theory for people photos. I have a starting point and I go for, I get the photo there and then I adjust to see how it looks once I get that starting point in. All of these are panels on the right hand side: basic, detail, tone, curve. And you'll notice that when I open up basic, yeah, I get more choices. When I open up detail, basic rolls up and detail opens. That I only have one panel open at a time. I do that because I have solo mode checked. I get here by right clicking on one of these panel banners and then you check solo mode. If you don't have solo mode checked, which I just turned it off, then you can open up the detail panel and then you can open up the basic panel and you will find yourself scrolling up and down this thing trying to get to all the choices. My opinion, but I think it's much better to put this in solo mode and you can only have one of these panels open at a time and it'll automatically close the one that you don't want. We're going to come back to the tools that are right here that stay right under the histogram all the time. But here's where I start when I edit a photo. If it's a landscape, first thing I do is I take highlights and I go -100, take shadows and I go +100, and then I set my white point. To set your white point, the way I do it is I hold the Alt key down. So I got my finger on the Alt key, then I left click the arrow that's in the middle of this slider and the screen turns black. It's because there's nothing in this raw file that is considered white. But as I slide this slider to the right, you'll notice the histogram is moving towards the right. And at some point, we're going to start seeing some little white specks. Oh, there's one right here in the top left-hand corner. Not surprising, the sky would be the brightest thing. So there, you may not be able to see it on Zoom, but there's one red pixel that I can see, and that's the only one I want, and I'm going to let go. And you see how bright this sky suddenly got. Now I'm going to take the shadows. I'm going to do the same thing. Hold the Alt key down, click the left mouse, and I'm going to drag my shadows to the left. I want to find where is my black. What I generally will do is I will go a little blacker, a little heavier on the blacks than I will on the whites. That looks a whole lot more like the sunset the day that I was out there. Still might be just a little bright, but I'm starting to get really what I saw that day. After I set these 4 sliders, I will come back to exposure, and sometimes I will bump the exposure down a bit or up a bit. In this case, I want to bump it down just a bit because that looks more like what I remember on that day. After I've done that, I will sometimes come in here and play with the white balance. I don't think I'm going to get any better white balance than what I've got. It's currently set to as shot, so my camera is on automatic white balance. It gave me 4350 Kelvin. You can click on the word for the white balance and take it to auto and let Lightroom decide what it wants. Well, Lightroom made a bad choice. It went to 2850, way too blue. Now you may like that though. I mean, you may see that and go, hey, that's a great image, the type of mood that I'm trying to present. But it's not what I saw that day. And that's my goal. My goal is to get to what I saw that day. Might be just a little bit too yellow. I am gonna bump it down just a little bit, and I like that a lot better. Now we're into the subjective stuff. It's what do you want? I will turn my texture up just a little bit. Oh, I skipped contrast. I want my contrast up just a little bit. Clarity just up a little bit. The dehaze tool is a relatively new tool in Lightroom. It is wonderful. I'll put a little dehaze in here. Vibrance and saturation. The way I was explained vibrance and saturation is a major adjustment. Vibrance is a minor adjustment. So if I bump this up a bunch, I don't know if on Zoom, maybe Jackie, you can tell me, is that really showing up how oversaturated that's appearing?
It does.
Yeah. See, that's not what I want. So I can put this back to 0 just by double clicking the word. Any one of these things can be put back to 0 just by double clicking the word of the slider. I do want to bump up the saturation, but not very much, just a little bit. Vibrance, I'll tend to put a little bit more vibrance in than saturation because, like I said, vibrance is a minor adjustment to a major adjustment. So that's everything that I would do for this shot in the basic panel. I then moved to the detail panel. And by the way, you notice I haven't cropped it. The reason why I haven't cropped it is because once you apply a crop, Lightroom has to process that crop every time you touch it. So do your crop adjusting last. For sharpening, my general rule is I have to go to 70 for the amount of sharpening, and for luminance and noise reduction, I got a 25. Then I mask it. Same thing I did with white balance. For the white point and the black point, hold the Alt key down, left click the mask slider. Sometimes Lightroom's a little slow. There it goes. So what I want to do is I want to move this slider up to create a sharpening mask that will outline the detail. That's probably about right. All right. Oh, and by the way, this is a zoomed in window that you can use sometimes if you're trying to, if you're worried about a particular component, you can move this around by left clicking your mouse and dragging that window around to get on the component of the image that you're trying to work on your sharpening. Tone curve, I don't get into tone curve. You're doing similar adjustments when you're doing the other things I've shown you. We'll get to hue, saturation, and luminance in a minute. Color grading is a more advanced topic. We'll talk about that another day. Lens correction, I always turn on remove chromatic aberration. That's when you see a lens that gives you some funny colors around the edges of a building or tree limbs. I also enable profile correction where Lightroom knows the physics of this lens and it corrects any skew that would naturally occur. You'll notice my lens profile popped in because in the image data, in the metadata, this lens profile was picked up and applied. We're going to talk about some of these others photos and adjustments on another photo. So just about everything that I've applied here would be my standard adjustments, with the exception of this white point setting and this black point, as well as this mask setting right here. So what I do is I'm going to turn that mask off for just a minute. The basic, I'm going to set the white point back to neutral and the black point back to neutral. Now, oh, I'm sorry, and my exposure. My white point back to as shot. These are the basic settings that I want brought in to an image. If you want to build something like this and apply to every landscape picture that you take just as a starting point, once you have it set, come to the left-hand side under presets, hit the plus sign, create a preset. You will get to name the preset. You will check which items in your adjustments you want to be a part of the preset. And then you can hit create, and you will have one similar to this one that I created called 100 Landscape. It's called 100 Landscape because these two 100s right here, and it's what I use for landscapes. So now that I've undid my my settings, I'm going to undo, and undo. Apparently I'm not undoing right. There we go. No, still not right. Oh, my white's not right. Okay. So the last thing that I want to do in this image is I need to crop it. Just out of curiosity, a little audience participation. When I crop it, what else do I need to do to this photo? There's something that's just bugging the fire out of me.
Well, it's that building on the right side. I kind of balance it.
Yeah, crop that little building out. Absolutely.
The steeple's not straight.
Yeah, the steeple's not straight. The photographer was holding his camera crooked. So when I crop this, I want to straighten this photo. So I hit the crop. And if Jan's still on here, Jan's on here. You ask a question about why did I put the doorknob where I put the doorknob? Because of the rule of thirds. And your crop will open up with an overlay of your choice. I like rule of thirds, so this is the rule of thirds overlay. So to crop this, you got handles around the perimeter. You also have some standard crops, like if I wanted a 1x1 crop, if I want a 5x7 crop, that's portrait. And if you hit the X on your keyboard, it'll flip it to landscape. If you hit it again, it'll flip it back to portrait. If I wanted, well, 2x3, that's what most of our cameras shoot, is 2x3. If I wanted something more panoramic, 16x9 maybe. And if this lock is in the locked position on the right hand side here, then when I drag this, even if I get a sidewall, the aspect ratio of this crop will never change. If I unlock it, then the aspect ratio is anything I want it to be. This will trip you up. If you leave this photograph with it unlocked, when you go to your next photo, it'll still be unlocked. And I have fought this lock, trying to get the lock back. And I have learned that if I do crop in odd aspect ratios frequently, but I have tried to make it my habit to put that lock back. because when you move on to your next photo, everything will work a whole lot better for you. But let's put this back into a 4x6. And by the way, if you don't like your crop, or you do something really crazy, like your mouse stuttered and you end up with something like that, and you say, well, I got to get out of this. Get in the crop and right click, and then you get a menu and you can reset the crop. And now you're back at square one. So one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to get that little building out of the picture. I think that's a good call. I want a little tighter at the top maybe, and you can see by that line that that steeple is crooked. So I'm going to left click outside of the crop space, and I'm going to just move my mouse enough so that that steeple is getting straightened. That looks pretty straight. And then when I hit the crop button up here at the top, that's my photo. I didn't lose the rest of the photo. It's still there. Remember, the raw image is always going to be there. These are just the adjustments that are being applied to this particular photo. So if I like this photo, this is really nice, but I want to see what we can do different to it. You can come down here to your film strip, right click, and find create virtual copy. So this virtual copy that's being created is a duplicate of the first one. It's another entry in the catalog. So my raw file is still there, but now I can do something different with this one. Let's just do something simple. Let's go back to that 16:9 and pull this down just a little bit. You'll notice I put that steeple on the third, and there are other overlays for composition that you might find helpful. And if you want to use them, you can use the O key, the letter O, not the number 0, the letter O for overlay. That's a different type of composition. Here's one that if you were trying to do something that was symmetrical and you wanted to get your middles, here's one for that. There's a science behind this particular composition, kind of lost on me, but I think it would be helpful to some people, I'm sure. This is a tighter symmetrical type overlay. This is the golden spiral, the Fibonacci calculation. And that may not be where you want it. And there's a way to rotate this around, and I'm fixing to, it's hold the shift key down and hit the letter O. And it'll flip that around so that you'll get it in the quadrant of the image that you're interested in. Here is a crop that gives you the different size of prints. You might need that if you want to try to make sure that you accommodate certain sizes. Here's a tight grid overlay, and I'm back to the third. Any questions so far?
Yes, I have one, Lamar.
Go ahead.
When you were showing the different, like you showed the rule of thirds and all of that, but then you showed the spiral. What kind of what kind of picture would we, yes, that. Well, why would we use that?
So what I suggest you do is go to Google and look up golden spiral.
Okay.
I will have to Google how to spell. Matter of fact, Bob, look up how to spell Fibonacci and put it in the chat. I can't spell that at all, but that would be something else to look up. You know, like a seashell has this exact spiral. It's a mathematical calculation. It's found in nature in all kinds of places, and subsequently our eye is naturally drawn to something that works along these lines. And if you'll notice, I did it with that steeple, not even knowing. That picture, excuse me, if you're looking at this picture, your eye would move through all of this light. Well, I just moved the photo. Your eye would move through all of this light and it would land on that steeple. That steeple just draws you to it. So I would
Okay.
I would suggest reading up on that golden spiral and seeing how that might answer the question for you. Anything else?
What
Go
was
ahead.
the other? What was the other?
I don't know the
name
names of them. Oh,
It's in the-
Fibonacci. Fibonacci. That's the. It's
it's
the
in the chapter.
mathematician that came up with it.
Okay. Oh, I got it from Bob. Thank you.
You bet. All right.
Injecting.
So, go ahead. Did somebody have a question?
Go ahead, Lamar.
Okay. So here's another photo, and what I wanted to demonstrate with this particular photo is how a raw file can save the day, because the raw file captures so much of your image that if you just depended on your camera to JPEG process, you wouldn't get what you really wanted. So I'm going to do the shortcut, and I'm going to apply my preset. Do you see how now I have blue sky?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have it before. Now, I don't like my preset. It did a good job, but it's not probably right where I want to leave it. Well, let me go ahead and set my white point. I don't want near that much white. Barely any. Right there. Set my black point. That's getting better. In this particular case, because the photo was a little overexposed, I'm probably going to have to bring my shadows back. And sure enough, that's helping out a lot. And I might bring my highlights back. If I had to properly expose this photo, but I kind of did it on purpose so we could talk about how you can rescue a photo. I want to bring those highlights look good like that. If I bring my shadows back, you're starting to get to a photo that looks pretty decent. I'm going to bring my exposure down and then my shadows back up. Sometimes it just takes some playing around with what you can do. Yep, that's coming in. Now I'm going to check my auto. No, that's way too yellow. Way too yellow. That's at 5600 Kelvin. I'm going to try 5400. Yeah, I like that. I think that dehaze would help this photo a fair amount. Look how much blue sky we recovered because we processed this photo in Lightroom. One thing I'll show you about hue, saturation, and luminance. There are all these colored sliders, and I'm on luminance. If I go to saturation, the sliders still look pretty much the same. If I go to hue, they still look pretty much the same. You can get all, and you'll have all three sets of sliders. That gets to be a little overwhelming for me sometimes. Kind of like it where I work with one or the other. I rarely work with saturation. I'll tend to work with luminance more than anything. And I really like this little eyedropper tool that's in the left-hand corner of the slider tool. If I know I want the blues to be a little darker, I can just turn the blues down. Maybe the aquas just a little bit. Maybe the green grass and what's in those hills. So I'm not changing the color. I'm changing the brightness. Is it darker blue, or is it lighter blue? If I go to hue, then I can adjust by using the blue slider. All of the blues will get changed. So I can change it to where now we have a green sky, which looks like it's out of an alien movie or something. I'll put that back, but I could make it maybe just a little more towards the darker blue. I really like this tool right here though, because what it does for me, I'm going to go back to luminance. grab this tool, and you'll notice that my cursor now has the copy of that tool on it. Point to the color you want to adjust, left click, drag it down, and that slider moves. Drag it up, and that slider moves. So you can go and you don't have to guess as to what the color that you want to adjust. I want to adjust this green right here. I left click on it, drag it down. It's adjusting the greens. It's adversely affecting my water though, so I'm going to put it back. Here's where we started. Here's what we ended up with. What a difference. And by the way I'm flipping back and forth is with the back slant key. The back slant is the slant that's leaning back. It's just above your enter key. And so you can just hit that and it'll toggle between kind of the before and the after of it. Any questions so far? So let's go to Saturday a week ago. I had one of my favorite models stop by the house. Her mom had to drop something off at our house. And I said, Jamie, come over here and take a picture. I've got a camera club meeting and I need a person. So I don't edit people photography the same way I edit landscapes. It's just, you're dealing with a lot of different values. So I have my 70 people preset, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the button, and it's going to apply all my starting points to this picture. Still hadn't seen a lot of difference. The largest difference is right here. Highlights and shadows, they don't go negative 100, positive 100. They go negative 70, positive 70. If you push these out to 100, your skin tones will not look natural. That they will look horrible is what they will. So that's my advice, is keep this within 70. And so now that I've done my presets, which what my presets do is see, like, it's already got chromatic aberration and my lens profile is already loaded. My details, I've already got sharpening at 70 and noise reduction at 25. So these are just my starting points. So now I'm going to set my white point, hold Alt, slide the white slider to the right. Up, there's my white points shining in. I just barely want any white points. That's on 46. So I'm going to manually type 45. Now I'm going to do my black point and bring it down. I go a little heavier on the black than I do the white. It's just a richer photograph, in my opinion, with the darker, a little more black in it. Dehaze, I'll hit just a little bit. And then I'll go to my detail panel and I'll set my mask. What a difference from there to there. The other thing I want to do is I want to do a little bit of a vignette on this photo. And I wanted to, there's been a rare occasion that I've used a white vignette. You get white when you move to the right. You get black when you move to the left. And I think a little bit of a vignette works nice. That may be too much, but I also want to crop this photo. So I want to do my vignette after I apply my crop. So I'm going to turn my crop off. I mean, my vignette off. I'm going to go back to my crop. We'll go back to our thirds. And the first thing I want to do is straighten this picture. I am horrible about leaning. I generally hold my camera and I tend, for some reason, I guess I'm lopsided. I lean to the left. And if you don't do anything else but straighten your photos, your photography will improve drastically. And you can look at this background and see that everything's leaning top left, right? So there's a couple of ways to adjust. You saw how I adjusted it earlier. You can also use this slider and you can adjust and straighten. A tool that I really like using is this ruler. And if you click on it, the ruler attaches to your cursor. Then you can go find a straight line and run this ruler down it, and it will straighten your shot. So here's a straight line, this brickwork in the background. And I'm going to left click at the top, drag this straight line down against this brickwork, and my photo is now straight. Having done that, I might bring this in just a little bit, and I might bring the photo so she's a little bit more to the right-hand third. Now I'll apply a little bit of a vignette. A little too heavy. Oh man, I need a minus sign. There we go. Is that too dark, you think? You think it ought to be a little lighter? Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too. In my opinion, a vignette should do its job without you knowing it's there. Would y'all agree?
Yes.
If you can see it, it's too heavy, in my opinion. You know, photography is very subjective. But if it's there and you know it, it's too heavy. But now, as a photographer, I can look at something, I go, yeah, there's a little bit of a vignette in that, you know, and you'll know it's there, but you're not being drawn to it. You're not getting your attention drawn to it. So I think I've run right at about an hour, and that's what I was trying to accomplish. Very basic information. There's one other thing I did want to show you. I wanted to show you these buttons up here at the top. So we talked about crop. I wanted to talk to you about this one, spot removal. This is the one thing in detail that that's a detail edit that I will use in Lightroom when it's not a lot. And in this photo, there's not a lot that I would want to do it like a detail edit. But this is a little tool that, like, you know, Jamie just didn't have the best skincare this particular day. And I want to get that little knot, that little spot. So what Lightroom does is the spot that I clicked on, it says, what's the best match? It decided that right near next to it was the best match. And if I wanted to move it, I could just by left clicking and moving it over. But I'm going to trust it, and I'll turn that off. And yep, that's a pretty good little spot removal. And I'll get another one right there. I don't even know if y'all can see those on the Zoom screen or not, but just a couple little spots where her face needed to touch up. This is a red eye correction. I don't find that it works all that well. I haven't used it in a long time. Maybe they've improved it. A graduated filter, I do use that a lot. This is a radial filter. This is a brush tool, and I do use the brush tool a lot. I like the brush tool for a couple of different things, but right here under Effect, Custom, you can drop this down and you can pick the effect you want. And they have one called Teeth Whitening. And you can select that and then come right down here and go right across somebody's teeth with a little bit of a brush, and it'll get that unnatural look that sometimes you need to remove. And then when you click your brush again, you're done. Any other questions I can answer that's kind of in the scope of what we've been talking about tonight? Just the basic stuff. Lightroom
You make
is a,
everything look so very simple.
well, it truly is. It is pretty straightforward, but it's like anything else in life. You got to invest some time to learn how the tool works, and I will tell you that there are hundreds and hundreds of features in Lightroom that I do not know how they work, like map, book, slideshow, print, and web. I don't ever go in these. I use library and I use develop. And even in develop, I have messed around with tone curve. I have watched YouTube videos on tone curve. I think that I get the results that I want with, I'm in the wrong panel, with highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. If you'll notice, when you go to tone curve, highlights, lights, darks, and shadows. I believe you're adjusting something. It's the same adjustment, just you're doing it a different way. If a tone curve works for you, I'd say go for it. So anything else?
Well, Lamar, thank you very much. I know I've been using Lightroom for years, and you've shown me a couple things that I didn't even know how to do.
Well, Jackie, next time you do the presentation, and I bet you I'll learn some things. I mean, I occasionally have the opportunity to go to lunch with some buddies, and I've brought challenges to the discussion, and I've had one of them go, have you ever looked at, and I can distinctly remember dehaze tool, Rick Lewis telling me one time, use more dehaze, even in photos that do not have haze in them. And he was right. Matter of fact, I didn't even apply any to this photo. Just a touch. It does not take much.
Sometimes I use it in the opposite direction when I want it hazier.
Sure. Yeah. When you're getting creative.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. It's been a great presentation. I loved how, and we are going to set up a YouTube channel, and it's all in the future, and we'll set this up where you can go access it, play it back, stop it, whatever you need to. Jan, you're talking about he makes it look simple. If you want to, to recreate what he did, when we get this set up, you can go look at it and, stop, pause, okay, you go and do on your Lightroom and start it again. And, just like you do with any of the others. So, as we go forward, when we have these types of trainings and such, we're going to record them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
Lamar,
you so much.
you did a great job. You
Fantastic.
always do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. I've got to go.
Okay.
All right.
All right, take care. Thanks, Lamar.
You did a
Thank
great
you.
job, and I appreciate it.
Well, we're getting kind of late, so thank you, everybody. We will see you either